Hello, everybody. It's Roberto. I I'm still chipping away at recovery. I've had one slip since the last video I made, but I'm back on the road again to recovery. I'm still seeing my sponsor and going to um, counseling with a Christian counselor and working the steps. So, it's a long road to hoe. I've been practicing active addiction for over 30 years. And now I've been in recovery seriously for a little over a year. And I am doing way better than I was at the beginning of it. I'm just using the tools that I've learned and trying to do better. And this channel is designed to help people who are new in recovery and want to understand the 12 steps and maybe get point of view of somebody as they do it, as they learn. So today I'm going to talk about step one. I was suggested this book by my sponsor for AA called The Steps We Took. This guy, Joe McHugh, a lot of people know him in AA from the Big Book study tapes. He wrote this book, The Steps We Took, and it says a teacher of the 12 steps shares his experience, strength, and hope with all those recovering from addictions, all who want to recover, and all who love them. And I suggest this book highly. I really like it. He's kind of a down to earth guy, and he explains things in a way that I can understand. And so, for people who are new to the program, I'll find in here the steps. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. One, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, but you can actually put anything in there you want powerless over. There's a lot of things you can be powerless over. Alcohol is just one of the things over which I am powerless, and that our lives had become unmanageable. He says, what is the problem? We can become so caught up in a problem that all we can see to do is to try harder, try to get the wrong method to bring the right results by doing it harder. Step one tells us we better stop and name the problem and become willing to admit defeat before we rush in to fix things. Step one, we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. All right. The thing with step one's been my experience is, I start working the steps and it's obvious to me that I am powerless over alcohol and drugs because I can't stop using them and I keep trying to control them. I'm like, well, this time I'm only going to use a limited amount, or I'm only going to use on these days, or I'm going to switch to this type of alcohol or this substance instead of this substance. And that's trying to control something that has shown me that I can't control it. Obviously, if I can't, I'm one of those people who, the big book in AA says that you're an alcoholic if, when you drink, you can't control the quantity you drink, or if when you sincerely want to stop, you can't stop. Well, I can, argue and rationalize around the first part of that because there are times when I have when I went out to dinner maybe and had a glass of wine with dinner or two, couple beers, went home, didn't drink anymore, hung out, watched TV, spent time with my family, whatever. So, there are times when, in my opinion, I have been able to drink successfully. That's not usually the case. If I go out to a bar for my birthday or something with my buddies, which I haven't done in a long time, but we start drinking, we're going to have a couple beers, and then it's always more than I wanted to have. One night, I was getting low on money, and the bartender was like, we got specials on shots of Bacardi 151. Just so you know, in case you don't realize it, that is always a bad idea. But I thought it was a great idea because I had been drinking, and so I did. Well, that was a rough night. Well, actually, the night I don't remember if it was rough, but I know the next day was rough. And that has been typical of my behavior. I had listened to a message one time on YouTube from a guy who was an old timer in AA, and he was talking about if you want to know if you have a problem, well, the big book talks about try to do some controlled drinking and see if you can stop yourself. Well, I've tried that lots of times. Sometimes I fail. It worked for me that one occasion, but I know now that if I break down and I drink a few alcoholic beverages one night, I need to get immediately back in the program the next day, because I'll say, oh, I only drank 2 last night, and the next time maybe I'll drink 4. Then the next time, it's not something that I can keep moderated for a long period of time. That guy said, if you want to know if you have a problem with cocaine, get an 8-ball of cocaine and just do some of it and put the rest away for the next day. See, that is hilarious to me, because that is not a thing. I don't buy cocaine, but if I were to buy cocaine, there's no saving some for the next day. It's either doing it all or flushing it down the damn toilet when I'm halfway done with it. So, I mean, I know that I am powerless over that particular substance and other ones. And so anyway, the thing that I was going to say is, so you start working the steps. I mean, for me, and I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs and my life is unmanageable. And I go on to the next step and I start working the steps, and then, I make it 15, 30 days in the program, doing good, sober, clean and sober. And then, something in my brain tells me that, let's try this again. And I go to my sponsor and I tell him, and he's like, okay, we're back at step 1. I'll tell you personally, I don't know what your experience is with it, but that is super duper frustrating. They're like, well, obviously you're back at step 1. You don't think you're powerless because you tried to drink again. But, I'm just trying to get these steps done, man, so I can get some relief. But what I'm learning now is that this is a lifelong process. And they tell me that you got to work steps 1 through 9 pretty much daily. So, going back to step 1 seems like a horrible thing for somebody like me, because I was like, well, I was 30 days in. I really wanted to make it another 30 days. I didn't feel bad about myself, whatever. But I mean, for a person who's successful in this program, they have to do step 1 every day. They have to get up and surrender, get on their knees, surrender their higher power, ask for help. I mean, I've done all that stuff. And, I heard a guy at a meeting one time say, I don't know anybody who has asked their higher power to help them not drink today and then drank. And I want to say, well, me, I mean, clearly I was not fully committed to that plan, because I botched it. I asked my higher power to help me not to drink, but then I carried my happy butt to the ABC store or the grocery store or the bar or whatever and put the alcohol in my mouth. He didn't do it. So, I mean, I'm just the biggest thing that I know now is the honesty. I have to tell my sponsor what happened. I have to tell my counselor what happened. I have to be willing to talk about it at meetings, because the truth is what will set you free. And, I can go to meetings and pick up chips and pretend like I'm sober and fool everybody, but that's not helping me any. And, because, it's like my sponsor told me, he said, drinking that one time didn't take away your 30 days of sobriety. Yeah, you got to start over again. But I mean, during the time when I was sober and I was working the steps and I was praying in the morning and meditating, I still have gained a lot of insight. And really, for me, that's a big part of what this program is all about. Showing me my patterns and my thought processes so that I can learn about them, so that I can't BS myself. Because, we say, well, I say to myself, well, I've been doing good and I'm only going to drink this much or whatever it is. And once you learn a lot about yourself and you see that pattern, then you know that that's a crock. And, you can still say that, but you know that it's not true. So that's what's happening for me. I'm seeing patterns in my life. I'm seeing the kinds of things that drive me and my addictive behavior. And most recently, this time when I drank, what happened was, historically for me, I don't get along well with bosses. I struggle with authority. I have heard a lot of addicts and alcoholics say that that's a common thread for them. And I've learned for me, it's ego driven because I think this job is beneath me. I think I can do a better job than my boss. I pick apart everything that he or she does and find fault with it. And I rationalize why it's okay for the rules not to apply to me. And this has been a pattern that I've been in over and over. One thing that I'm learning, and I have heard a lot of people say, is that, when you're in a situation like that where you're being tested, you're going to continue to have to jump through that hoop until you successfully complete that task. Well, I've had some jobs where I've respected my boss more than other jobs, and I did a better job listening to that boss because I respected them more. But here at the age of 54, I'm working for this guy. He's not that bad of a guy. But another thing that I read in a book about step 6, where you're kind of looking at your character defects and being willing for God to remove them, character defects and shortcomings are, just ways that you miss the mark, that you don't measure up. Things that you do, maybe your, popular one is selfishness, being self-seeking in your behavior, having fear. These are ones that I have: fear, lust, things like that, overindulgence, whatever you want to call that, gluttony. So these are things that I've identified as character defects, and these are things that I've asked my higher power to remove from my life. Now, the thing is that, your higher power wants to do that for you, but you don't get to pick how long it takes, which order they're removed, or in what manner they're removed. So that step 6 book was saying, as soon as you get serious about having character defects removed, your higher power is going to put you in situations with people that are like that have those same character defects that you have. So it's going to really piss you off, because I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, we see our faults in other people. I heard that for many years. Well, it is true for me. People who do things that I do that really, really get on my nerves, I've learned that they're getting on my nerves because I hate that behavior in myself, and I see them do it and I judge them for it. And so, that book said that your higher power will put you in a position where somebody is really grating on your nerves, and it's because you're looking in a mirror and you're learning what you're like. And so, like with this particular guy, he helps me out. I had a stroke. I have physical limitations. He's a nice guy. He works around my schedule. He's tried to accommodate my disability. But there's a lot of things about him that aren't really a big deal, that just really get on my nerves, that I don't like about the way he runs the business. But, generally I've had bosses that were much bigger a-holes. I wouldn't even call this guy an a-hole. I'd just say he's got some pet peeves, idiosyncrasies, things of this nature that really grate on me. And so I have used that as an excuse to excuse myself from some of the things that I know that I'm supposed to do. And I always have an excuse of why I don't have to do it. Maybe, oh yeah, I know I'm supposed to do this cleanup thing, but there's a lot of customers coming in, so I'm just not going to do it. That sounds like a really good excuse. But, the bottom line is that my boss says he wants me to do something. He doesn't care that we had a lot of people coming in. You still got to do it. And so, it's easy for me to justify not listening to my boss, but that doesn't make it okay to do that. And so what I realized was when I was really struggling before I drank, something that I have not been very good at and been counseled to do by people in the program is before you drink, call someone. Well, I have had experience in the past where I've tried to call my sponsor, maybe somebody else, can't get in touch with them, leave them a voicemail, and I'm like, oh, well, I tried. Nobody was there to help me. Self pity is another one of my character defects. So, you know what? I tried to do the right thing, didn't work out for me. So now I'm going to go drink. And then the next time I want to drink, I don't even bother calling because, they're never home when I call them. Well, I called. I got a guy in the program on the phone. First two guys I called, I couldn't get in touch with. Was persistent, which is the advice that I've been given, suggestions. And I tried calling until I found somebody. We talked. I felt better, and I wasn't 100% sure what was going on, but my boss wrote me up like a few days before that. Not a big deal. They didn't yell at me, but his boss came and he talked to me and they're like, look, you've been doing this. They weren't buttholes about it, but it hurt my feelings, and I thought it was unfair because I really didn't think it was a big deal. Well, apparently they thought it was a big deal. And they were like, I won't be able to do this anymore. I need you to sign this paper saying you won't do it. And I was like, okay. But I mean, it burned me up. I was hot. So the next day, like I was praying about it and I felt my higher power saying, you owe that guy an amends for what you were doing. He's your boss and you were wrong. So I went back to him the next day when I went into work and I was like, hey man, I want to apologize to you for that. And just let him know that, I knew he was a good boss. He was accommodating. He tried to help me out. He was, he always worked with me on my schedule, and I apologized to him. So in my mind, that was taken care of. I did my part. I apologized to him. I humbled myself. I went to him. I did the right thing. But you know what? It was still bothering me. I didn't realize that that's what was bothering me. But the big book says if we're disturbed, something is wrong with us and we got to figure out what it is. And it gives us tools to figure that out. So I had narrowed it down when I was talking to this guy that it had something to do with that situation, but I couldn't figure out what it was because I had gone to him and apologized to him. So I was like, I did my part, man. What else is there? Well, after I got off the phone with him, I still ended up going and getting some alcohol, and I'll rationalize right now. It wasn't a great deal of alcohol. I came home and I locked my keys up as I have learned to do. I have a safe with the time lock on it. I'm not suggesting this as a plan for anyone, but for me, it has helped me in situations because I knew that as soon as I got alcohol in my system, that it wasn't going to be enough and I was going to want to go out and find something else. So I figure if I lock my keys up before I drink, then when I get that wild hair, which always happens when I drink alcohol, I won't be able to go anywhere. And so that's what I did. Lock my keys up and I drank. And guess what? I only had 3 alcoholic beverages and I was ready to roll, man. I was wishing that I had access to the keys because I was going to go spend money that I did not have on something that I should not have. And so I'm glad that I locked my keys up because it prevented me from doing that. But I still reset my sobriety date. So anyway, the next day I went to an AA meeting and there was a guy in there that's got a lot more sobriety than me. And he was talking about the ego. And that's something that I have identified as one of my driving factors in my disease of alcohol and drug addiction. It's my ego. I have too high of an opinion of myself. That's a common thing that I've heard with alcoholics. For me, I have very low self-esteem, but I have this huge inflated ego to try to make up for it. And that's common. I've heard other people say that, and that's actually where I learned it from, other people sharing about that. So this guy was talking about how, he was in prison and he got clean and his ego was kind of under control for several years. But then in the last few years, his ego has been inflated again, and it's been causing him problems. And during his share, my higher power convicted me that that's my issue. That, and also that, yes, I did owe my boss an amends, but that the big picture is that, the Bible teaches, and I know, this is hard. People don't want to hear Christian values, but I'm a Christian, and the Bible teaches that when you work, you're supposed to work unto God and not unto man. So basically what God's saying, in my opinion, is you don't work for him, you work for me. And my higher power holds me to a higher standard than my boss. My boss holds me to a standard, and it's, pretty set. Like, you have to do this, and this. Got to come to work on these days. I don't want you to come up short. You got to be nice to the customers, whatever. But my higher power is like excellence, man. You got to strive to be the best. You might not reach that goal, but you at least need to try to do that. And when you're making excuses to not do your work, you are not trying to do your best. You're trying to get out of something. So I realized that I needed to make amends to him. Of course, I'd already drank the night before, but I did. I made amends to him. And then I shared about it at the meeting. And what happened was, if you're not familiar with 12-step meetings, is it wasn't a very huge meeting. So it goes around, they have a topic, and I can't remember what the topic was, but I didn't have a lot of experience in the topic. So I kept my mouth shut when it got to be my turn to share. And I was like, I'm just going to listen. And so everyone that wanted to share had already shared, and there was still time left. So they were like, does anybody have anything else they'd like to share about before we're done? And so I shared about this experience with my boss. And I was just trying to get it off my chest. So after the meeting, a guy came up to me and he was like, hey, man, I really appreciate you sharing about that. I needed to hear that. And we talked for about 15 minutes about our similar experiences in this area, about having a boss that's not really that bad of a guy, but we just give him a hard time because whatever. And it's how it's ego driven. And that is the fellowship of 12-step programs. That's cool. So now this guy who, I don't really know, but we obviously have something in common. He talked about some books that he's been reading when he shared. And I've been reading a book that kind of relates to what he was talking about. And I think it's a killer book. And so I ordered it today, and I'm going to give it to him because I think it'll help him. And, it may help him. It may not help him. He might give it to someone else. I don't know. But all I know is I felt like my higher power was saying, hey, man, that book you're reading, so-and-so might like that book. And so those are the kinds of things that you learn in the program. You start to be others-centered instead of self-centered, because addiction for me is a selfish disease. I drink and I use to make myself feel good. And I don't really care how it affects other people, my family, my job, my health. I just want what I want. And that's selfish. That's self-driven. And this guy, Joe McHugh, he talks about there's two wills in the universe. There's God's will and there's human will. And that's what step one boils down to. We know that it isn't, or I know that it is not God's will or my higher power's will for me to drink or use drugs. But you know what? Sometimes I'm cool with that. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I've had a bad day, or it's been 30 days, or whatever my excuse is. It's Roberto's will now. Higher power, I'm really not interested in what you have to say, and I'm going to do it my way. And that is the insanity of addiction. Like, yeah, I know that I've been doing this for 30 years and it's been a bad plan. And, I've had negative impact. I've been negatively impacted from it. But guess what? Now I'm going to try it again and it'll be okay. And it's not okay. And I thank God that today I realize that even when I screw up and I do that, it's not the end of the world. I used to beat myself up and say, oh, well, obviously I can't do this. So I'm done in recovery now. I'm going to go back to doing what I want to do. I know now that I got to get back on track immediately. I got to be honest about it with my sponsor. I got to start over at step one, and I need to, work it out. Like I said, it's a long road to hoe. It's a Southern colloquialism for it's going to be hard work and it's going to take a long time. But I mean, it is what it is. And the alternative for me is to just be miserable and be in full active addiction on a regular basis. And I know where that leads. But another thing that Joe says in this book is if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so it's a long road to hoe. So get hoeing, man. And that's where I'm at. I'm working the program. It's hard work. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm doing better. I'm getting a better relationship with my higher power. And, it's like my sponsor tells me, don't quit until the miracle happens. Keep coming back. And I hear a lot of people share that, some people, it took them 10, 15, 20 years of being in the program, consecutively until they were willing to do what it takes. I have been in and out of the program for 30 years, but I have never invested the time and effort in it like I am now. And like I've shared before, if you watched any of my videos, I had a stroke. I almost died. I have disability now. Obviously my brain still works. I think that I have cognitive impairment, but I mean, obviously I can carry on a conversation, operate YouTube. I mean, I'm not on a feeding tube somewhere in a nursing home, which I could be. I have a constant reminder every day through my disability with my left arm, having a tremor, not being able to use it, having problems walking. It sucks, but it could be worse. I could have died. I could be in a nursing home. I could be a vegetable, not know what's going on. Lots of things that could be. So I look at this as a second chance. And, it took, unfortunately for me, I knew it was a problem, but it took a major life event for my higher power to get my attention and say, okay, man, that's enough messing around. It's time to do this. And, it's hard work, man. It's a simple program, but it's not easy. It takes work. If anybody tells you different, they're lying to you. But the good thing is that even though I haven't been 100% sober for this whole year, my life has changed for the better. I am happier. I'm seeing things change. I'm healthier. My diabetes is reversing. My blood pressure is going down. My relationship with my teenage son has improved leaps and bounds. So I know that if I go back to active addiction, that I'm going to lose all that. Maybe die. I don't know. Maybe not die. Maybe just hate life. But that's not a choice for me today. And I know that persistence is the key to this. I can't give up on it. And so I would just encourage you to keep on keeping on. If you're in the same situation I'm in, you know that this has been an issue for you, or you have just come to the point where you can't take it anymore. Don't give up. It's a process that's going to take time and effort. Get you a sponsor somebody that's worked the steps, that knows the program, that can guide you and teach you what you need to do, give you suggestions. You can talk to them about things. One of the things in the program, it says that the promises that situation that we have insight into situations which used to baffle us and we know what to do. Well, that's starting. My head is starting to clear, because when I was baffled and I didn't know what to do, my go-to thing was always get ripped. Let's drink some beers, let's smoke some weed, whatever drug we can get our hands on, and just postpone this pain until another day. I mean, that wasn't really the plan, but that was what ended up happening. And today, I know that I have to do something about it. I can't avoid the inevitable. I try to figure out what I think is a good thing, and then I go to my sponsor and other people in the program, good counsel, and I tell them what's going on, and they help me make the right decision. They tell me if what I'm wanting to do is reality, or if it's not reality, it gives me a different perspective. It seems to me like other people can look into my situation and be able to narrow it down really easy because they're not involved emotionally. I don't know what to do, man. I'm confused. And they're like, well, I mean, clearly you need to not do this, or this sounds like a good plan. And it's good to have people like that. I mean, that's just another bonus of the program. So anyway, I see that I'm going 30 minutes. I don't want my videos to be that long, but I hope this helped somebody. And if it did, please leave me a comment or send me an email at piaster67@hotmail.com. P is in Paul, IA, S is in Sam, T is in Tango, ER 67 at hotmail.com. This is Roberto signing off.